Yo, oh my god, I'm so excited! This is like a dream come true. Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Total War, here we come. My favorite time period in history, my favorite novel. Oh, I am so beyond excited for this game, you guys. You have no idea how long I've wanted this. This is a dream come true for me. But it might not be for you. And what I mean by that is not because, oh, the Three Kingdoms is only for a select few individuals. No, 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 my friend. I mean, it might not be for you because you don't know it's for you, because you don't know that much about what the Three Kingdoms are. So, don't you worry, because I am here to help. For those who don't know, the Three Kingdoms period is a relatively short period in Chinese history, technically starting in the year 220, and lasting a mere 60 years or so. But the events leading up to the period has its origins in the 180s, starting with peasant uprisings and internal revolts in the Han Dynasty, and that led to political corruption and the rise of power of regional warlords, and everything was just a downward spiral from there. With the new game coming out, I figured, well, there's probably people who don't know jack shit about the Three Kingdoms period, but don't worry, Papa Mitch is here to help. Here's the basics you need to know about the time period. So the Three Kingdoms, which were actually Chinese dynasties, kingdoms is kind of a misnomer here, are Solway in the north of China, Shu Han in the southwest, and Eastern Wu in the southeast. The founders of each of these three dynasties began their military careers during the collapse of the Han Dynasty, which is why retellings of the period usually began in the late 180s or 190s. The era has an important place in Chinese culture as a whole. Not only is it full of historical legends and folk heroes, and is the source of numerous popular idioms, and has been the inspiration for thousands of Chinese operas, much of it was romanticized in the 14th century novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is considered one of the four great Chinese literary works. So I'm going to give you a rundown of who these three kingdoms were. We're going to start with Solway. The founder of the dynasty was named Cao Pi, and he was the son of one of history's most talented and also underrated politicians and military commanders, Cao Cao. Yes, I know it looks like Cow Cow and Cow P, but you're gonna have to move past that. Cao Cao, to this day, has a villainous reputation for his swift accumulation of power and abuse of imperial authority. However, at the same time, he was a talented military commander who utilized all his resources effectively and made sure to always employ the best and most talented of the officers and administrators he could find. He was also a writer and a poet, and some of his annotations on the art of war are included in modern copies of it. Shu Han was founded by the general Liu Boo, who is often portrayed during the time period as the underdog and hero, probably due to his frequent bouts with Cao Cao, who's usually considered the villain. Liu Boo came from the Liu family, that the Han Emperor actually hailed from, so that made him a scion of the imperial household. And he would frequently use that connection to his benefit in gathering land, allies, and troops in his pursuit to restore the Han Dynasty to the proper household. So that guy right there with the sword, that's Liu Boo right there in the trailer. The two men you see with Liu Boo are Generals Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, which in popular lore are Liu Bei's sworn brothers. Guan Yu is especially romanticized in Chinese history to the point where he has become an actual deity in many Chinese and even other Asian pantheons. Often termed a god of war, that name is a bit misleading. Think less like Ares and more like Athena in terms of his relationship with war, but even that isn't the most apt description. Worship of him pays particular attention to his reputation of loyalty and honor to his lord. He's actually frequently worshipped and observed in everything from Chinese businesses to the police forces to even groups of Chinese triads who honor him. Zhang Fei was a mighty warrior with a historical reputation for being a drunkard, but at times he would prove himself to be surprisingly resourceful and intimidating. There's actually historical sources that state, and this might be a little embellished, that he once held an entire army back with a single war cry. The last of the Three Kingdoms was Eastern Wu, which was founded by Sun Quan, who claimed descent from the famed strategist Sun Tzu. Sun Quan lost his father, a formidable commander named Sun Jian, at a very young age, and his elder brother Sun Ce would conquer large swaths of territories before being assassinated in 200, which left Sun Quan in control of the region of Wu in his early 20s. Compare this to Liu Boo and Cao Cao, who were both more middle-aged at this point in time. Of course, as I stated, the era is full of folk heroes, many of whom actually existed. And while their feats have been embellished over time, their historical reputation in documented sources certainly doesn't understate their abilities at all. So that warrior in black right there with that halberd, his name is Liu Boo, and he at the time was hailed the mightiest warrior in the empire. Liu Boo had a reputation as a fearsome cavalry general. In fact, there was a popular idiom that said among men, Liu Boo, among horses, red hair. Red hair was the name of his horse, and he was actively disloyal to everyone he ever served. So this historical reputation is what eventually turns him into the overpowered behemoth seen today in games like Dynasty Warriors and in TV shows like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms show. So the era is also full of many interesting and famous battles, many of which were the works of military geniuses and talented strategists, where small forces overcome incredible odds. Look no further than the Battle of Chur-Bi, which in English means the Battle of Red Cliff, where the combined armies of Liu Bei and Sun Quan, with the aid of their strategists Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang, were able to absolutely decimate Cao Cao's navy with fire, while being largely and amazingly outnumbered, with some sources stating Cao Cao's army had close to 800,000 troops. Cao Cao wasn't bereft of military achievements either, like the Battle of Guandu, where he turned what was almost military disaster with a lack of supplies into success by raiding, stealing, and torching rival warlord Yuan Shao's supply depot at Wuchao, leading Yuan Shao's morale plummeting, and Cao Cao being able to rout his much larger force. Or then there's the Siege of Hefei and the Battle of Zhaoyao Ford, where Cao Cao's general Zhang Liao, with an elite battalion of 700 men, broke Sun Quan's sieging army of 100,000. With historical events like this, it's easy to see how and why the period has been so heavily romanticized. The hard thing about the Three Kingdoms period for Western audiences is it's hard to get into, not because it's boring or anything, but primarily because there are so few options available for us to be exposed to it. So, while Romance of the Three Kingdoms has been translated numerous times, the book is rather blunt compared to what we're used to over here with the way that we've been writing stories and novels for centuries. So due to the different writing styles, it can be kind of difficult for some people to even get through. The excellent Romance of the Three Kingdoms TV series from China, there were two, one in the 90s and then one again in 2010. Those never received official English releases. So the few games based on the period known in the West, like Dynasty Warriors, has a dubious reputation, despite often being praised and highly enjoyed in Japan. Also not helping is a strong lack of documentaries about the era as well. But believe it or not, you know more about the Three Kingdoms period than you likely think. Many elements of George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series are similar and in some instances outright inspired by Three Kingdoms. Read about the Battle of Chur-Bi, and then read or watch the Battle of Blackwater. The two are a little too close for comfort if you know what I mean. So here's the real kicker. If you want to learn more about the time period to prepare for the next game, where do you go? Don't worry, your buddy Mitch is here for you. First and foremost, you can always read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. There is a new translation out by Yu Sumei and edited by Ronald C. Iverson, I'll put the link in the description, that reformats the story to read much more like a familiar novel to Western audiences. By all means, avoid the abridged version of the novel, which does a disservice to the work, omitting important details and at times omitting the entire Kingdom of Eastern Wu. There's also the Moss Roberts translation, which is the one that I've read and the one that I particularly enjoy. If you want the historical accurate information, you can also try to track down Raffaele di Crispigni, sorry Raffaele, I think I got that wrong, translation of Records of the Three Kingdoms, which was written during the end of the period. And that contains all of the historical documentation. There are other versions available as well, like I found this one known as Records of the Three Kingdoms in Plain English, in plain language, available on Amazon. I can also recommend D. Crispigny's Generals of the South, which details the lives and careers of Sun Jian, Sun Ce, and Sun Quan, three of the important figures in the founding of Eastern Wu. However, I also recommend before delving into any of those books, you have some knowledge of the period just to make your reading more enjoyable and interesting, and it'll also help you follow different relevant names and what's going on, especially if you're unused to Chinese names. If you like podcasts, There is a terrific Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast, which is an absolute fantastic retelling of the novel, and the guy who makes it puts so much effort into it, and he tells the story so well, and it's available for free right here on YouTube. I'll put that link in the description too. As far as films go, the best I can recommend is John Woo's Red Cliff, which is an epic about the naval battle of Chur B, and is a mix between the romanticized portrayal of the battle and the historical events that made it up. There are much less historical films as well, such as The Last Bladesman, which follows a folktale about Guan Yu, and Resurrection of the Dragon, which is a heavily romanticized portrayal of the life of Zhao Yun, one of Liu Bei's top officers. Now, don't tell anyone I told you this, but the entire 2010 Three Kingdoms TV show, which is absolutely incredible, is available for free with an English fan translation right here on YouTube. If a game is more your thing, there is Dynasty Warriors. These action games, in my opinion, and I know I'm not the only one, Jim Sterling, don't deserve their negative perception at all. For those new in starting out and most interested in getting an overview of the events of the period and much less the gameplay, I recommend Dynasty Warriors 7 the most, as its story mode does the best job at highlighting the key players and events of the time. There is also Dynasty Warriors 9 coming out in February, which is changing things up greatly for the series with an open world, totally new combat mechanics, and more, which might be worth your interest. Then there are the Romance of the Three Kingdoms strategy games. These games are not Total War-like necessarily. They focus most heavily on diplomacy and management and administration, but there is a heavy amount of tactical military planning involved. There's, I think at this point, 13 to choose from, and you'll have to do your own research as to which one's the best. I've only ever played the ones that were on the Super Nintendo. Now, I'll be doing a follow-up video soon discussing people's fears about the new game, especially about lack of unit variety and lack of factions, or too heavy of a focus on fantasy elements for a historical title, and other concerns, some of which I think are just misinformed and really something I don't think you're going to have to worry about. But there are a few that I think are fair, and we'll discuss what it could mean for the future of Total War, especially for this technically being a historical title, especially if it had some fantasy elements in it, and why I think that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as there remains to be stuff like Thrones of Britannia, which is very, very heavily historically based. So if you want to check back for that in a week or so, feel free. Now, to go hype myself up and play the awesome Three Kingdoms mod for Medieval 2, because oh my god, I can't wait to fucking play as Liu Boo!